Hey, this is Clint with Green Seasons Lawn and Tree Service. I am here on this nice breezy day to ask the question, is this crabgrass? One commonly found grass are those right there with all the little seed heads that you see that is annual bluegrass. And annual bluegrass is a cool season annual that is actively growing during the time that our crabgrass preventer is being applied. So bluegrass itself loves the cool weather. Annual bluegrass even more so. It will fizzle out when it gets hot, and it will leave a dead stem sticking up after it gets warm and it dies off. Annual bluegrass is distinctive by its seed head, and it doesn't have to be super tall to go to seed. Annual bluegrass and all bluegrass species are easily identifiable by their boat-shaped leaf tip. That is the most common ways to ID annual bluegrass, or all bluegrass varieties for that matter. This one right here is called Smooth Brome. And as you can see, it's growing next to my septic access. I assume it got here through a bad mix of grass seed. Smooth Brome has a couple of traits that make it easy to identify. The first trait are these rhizomes. That's going to shoot under the soil and pop up and create another plant. Now, the second and most obvious way to identify smooth brome is that M-shaped imprint in the leaf. That is the easiest way to identify smooth brome. Another very prominent grass that grows specifically in my yard, but I've seen it around, is quackgrass. And quackgrass is going to look a lot like that smooth brome. It has much more prominent rhizomes. You can see that right there. It was going a long ways. And it's not going to have that M on the leaf like the smooth brome does, but it's very aggressive and very persistent. Of course, it's here when we apply the crabgrass preventer. It's already grown at that point. So the thought of our crabgrass preventer taking care of this just isn't the case. With quackgrass, you have to control it with Roundup. Unfortunately, none of our broadleaf weed control or grassy weed control will take care of it. Right through here, you can see a lot of baby grass growing in there and a lot of kind of existing clumpy things growing in there. And all this grass, of course, is just from this spring. And the clumpy stuff has been here a while, and I'm going to show you what it is. Perennial Rye has clasping auricles, and it's like a little collar around the sheath as the new leaf blade is coming on. The second and much easier way to identify perennial rye is that the top side of the leaf blade is kind of a dull green, and then when you flip it over, the bottom side is a little glossy and shiny, and that is a good way to identify perennial rye. Perennial rye is often mixed in with turf type tall fescue or Kentucky bluegrass because it germinates so quickly. Perennial rye that germinates within like 5 days or so, and then fescue 7 to 10, bluegrass 3 weeks. You might ask, why don't we just use all perennial rye since it germinates so fast? Well, it does not like the heat so much. So in our climate in full sun, it would fizzle out. So that's why you want that turf type tall fescue. A commonly found grass is annual ryegrass. And even though it's called annual ryegrass, it's a grass that loves the cold weather. So here in the Kansas City metro, it's going to be actively growing in lawns that have had it in seed mixes that's been put down. Now it will fizzle out and die when it gets hot. A good indication is it will not have those big fat runners like quackgrass or brome. It's going to have round and light yellowish white stems. Orchardgrass is another very commonly found cool season perennial grass that is often mistaken for crabgrass. And orchardgrass is identifiable as a bunch type grass that does not have rhizomes, just its own little bunch type root system. And then the easiest way to identify orchard grass is that the stem is flat. See how that stem is flat and it's kind of sharp on the edge? And just like the last couple that I've showed in the other videos, it can't be controlled with anything but Roundup. So our crabgrass preventer isn't going to work. Our dandelion spray isn't going to work for this. Another one that we don't get too many calls on, but I've had a few over the years, is this right here. It's kind of laying down. You can see some that I pulled up there. Real fine bladed. Here's an example of it that I've pulled out. Kind of lays over and pops up. And that's creeping red fescue. It's sold as a shade tolerant grass. So when you're planting in the shade and you've purchased the shade tolerant grass, it's likely going to be this or have this in it. It's a perennial. Once again, it'll survive the season. It'll stress out in the heat and it'll go dormant in the wintertime. But it does a very good job in the shade if you can get it established. Back to the main theme of this, if you want to try to control it, of course, it's going to have to be something like Roundup to eradicated. Now, some of the grasses that we grow around here that don't always look like we think they should look like. So if we settle down into here, this finer bladed stuff, you guys recognize that from another video. There's the boat-shaped tip. If you remember from the Annual Bluegrass video, that's Kentucky Bluegrass. It's a cool season perennial. It's very popular over the years, but more recently, turf-type fescue has been more popular because it's more drought tolerant with a deeper root system than Kentucky Bluegrass, and it has that dark green color that we all want, as opposed to the old-fashioned forage fescues or Kentucky 31 fescue that has kind of a pale green color, which is kind of what you see, not as pretty of a grass right next to it.
There's a couple of grasses that I was not able to give examples of in my own yard. This one here is Rough Bluegrass, also known as Poa trivialis, and it is very common. It's in the bluegrass family. Sometimes it's called rough stalk bluegrass. I've zoomed in a little bit here on this picture. You can see there's a little bit of a red stem at the base of these, and if you look at this one here, I've tried to zoom in a little bit too. There's some red stems going on in there, and then there's a little bit of red stem at the base where the leaf meets the stem itself. This was taken from a customer's yard spring of last year. So these are our examples. These are coming out of our own customer's property. It's a perennial. It's something that survives all the time and it fizzles in the heat, but this time of year it's going to be out, and it's one of those that get mistaken for crabgrass because it doesn't look like everything else that's surrounding it. So that's what you're looking at, rough bluegrass or Poa trivialis, another one that can commonly be found.
Now, what does crabgrass actually look like right now on the 29th of April 2026? And this is a good indication of how big it should be right now. We've had warm weather and warm soil temps starting in late February and early March. So crabgrass, it's going to be about the size of your thumbnail, maybe a little bit bigger. You're going to find it in places like along the road here, on the edge of gardens, and on the edge of landscape beds. But you will not be finding it several inches tall in your yard today. So there you have it, folks. All the varieties of grasses that you can see in a yard in Missouri in April that is often mistaken for crabgrass. And now we've learned that maybe some of this stuff isn't crabgrass, but it is a grass that doesn't look like the grass that we want to have in the lawn. So, and that's the whole point of this video is we know there's other grasses out there. We know that there's things in the lawn that aren't what we want. To assume that it's crabgrass is very common. So we want to be educated and understand what we're looking at so that we're not buying the wrong product and putting the wrong product down or getting the wrong advice from a garden center or a lawn care company. If you need help, if you have any questions, if you're interested in knowing, then give us a call, 816-532-0173. We want to help have nice lawns, and we want people to be happy with the service that they receive. So give us a call. Thanks. Have a great day.